This is the Moondrop Void, Moondrop's first headphone, and well, it lives up to its name, and that's not a good thing. Three things I look for in a headphone: build quality, comfort, sound quality. Even 2 out of 3 of those things can make a good headphone with some caveats. I'll explain what I mean in a minute, but let's see how the Moondrop Void does in those 3 categories. In terms of build quality, it's not good. That is as bluntly as I can put it and as nicely as I can put it, because the choice of materials used along with the finish of the product is more reminiscent of a cheap headset than one that's asking for $200. But maybe we can look past that if the comfort and sound quality are really good. When it comes to comfort, it's not bad, but the headphone clamping force is definitely the first thing that comes to mind. When you put these on, it seems okay for a few seconds and then that headphone clamping force sort of sets in. Now, that in itself is not really an issue. Usually it goes away with time and usage and stretching, but there are 2 things that can alleviate it: the ear pads and the ear cup articulation. Now, the ear pads themselves are pretty decent. Now, I'm not going to go into things like the stitching of the ear pads because honestly Moondrop has bigger things to fix right now. But the ear pads themselves are reasonably comfortable, but they are shallow, which means your ears, my ears, which are not the biggest, already touch the inside of the ear cup, which I know is a pain point for a lot of people. I did notice that as you wear the headphones, the front part of the ear pad is a little bit shallower and narrower than the rear pad, which is interesting. It's something that I've seen ZMF do with his HD6XX pads, and maybe that's to do with the tuning. Just thought I'd point it out. Now, ear cup articulation is another thing that's quite important for comfort. To that extent, it does rotate back and forth this way just a little bit, just enough to make a little bit of a difference. But in terms of inward and outward articulation, well, it only goes inward. The frame actually stops it from articulating outward, and that's a misstep in my opinion, because if it did, then that would actually alleviate that headphone clamp to some extent. So it's something that maybe Moondrop can look to in the future. Overall, I think comfort-wise, it's okay. It's not the best, and I don't think I would use it for long listening sessions, but it's not the worst, and maybe it gets more comfortable over time. But maybe we can look past the mediocre comfort and the bad build quality if the sound is exceptional. I mean, this is Moondrop. They are an audio-first company after all. Well, there are some redeeming features. For example, the mid-range seems really nice and clean. The upper mids and the highs do seem to be a little more pronounced. There's a decent amount of extension there, but the upper mids, in my opinion, and maybe some of the highs, are pushed forward a little too much, giving it, in my personal opinion, a bit of a shouty sound. The other end of the spectrum, the bass, well, that's where the Void really earns its name, and not in a good way. Now, sub bass is there, but you really have to listen for it. And mid bass is also there. It's more present than the sub bass. It's more noticeable, but it's more like a cheaper headphone trying to attempt mid bass than an audiophile headphone. And that's a bit disappointing. And here's the thing: the lackluster bass performance of this headphone combined with the more forward upper mids makes this seem a lot shoutier than it would have been if the bass response would have been better. And that lends to a more fatiguing listening experience. Again, I found myself not willingly reaching for this for longer listening sessions, and I think that sound quality is definitely a part of that. And the one other thing that stands out is that across the frequency range, this is not a detailed headphone, which is okay if you had tonality and a cheap price point, but $200 is not that cheap, and the tonality also is not that great. So we have a problem. Now, the reason I said 2 out of 3 things is good enough for these 3 criteria is, well, you might be able to give up 1 or 2 things in favor of the other. Or if sound quality is a little bit of a problem, maybe EQ can help. But when I tried to EQ it, the bass response couldn't really be improved that much. I couldn't get more out of it without compromising on something else. And even if I did that, I couldn't get much more out of the bass. So tonality is a little bit of a problem in my humble opinion. Comfort is not that bad, but build quality is objectively just not where it should be. And the price point, well, at that price point, honestly, at this point, I would rather recommend you look at the HD560S, or honestly, nice pair of IEMs, even from these guys, will give you more detail, better bass response, just better overall listening experience. Now, while I was writing this review, Clinical actually put out a video on this very headphone, and I think he had much the same things to say. But what was really surprising was that Moondrop actually responded. And be honest with me, when was the last time you saw any company responding to constructive criticism in this way? Now, the cynical side of me wonders if anyone in Moondrop really thought that this was a finished product that was worth $200. It certainly doesn't seem like it, because honestly, it doesn't matter what Clinical and I have to say. The minute this gets out to the public and they've spent $200, I guarantee you the forums would have been set afire with the ire of all audiophiles alike, because it is that obvious. But the fact that they've responded the way they have means that, well, they've made a smart business decision, but they've also automatically garnered a lot of goodwill in the community. And both those things are fantastic for the brand. The question then is, what will they do with the Moondrop Void to make it fantastic for us? Because I am definitely rooting for them. More competition in the budget headphone space is very important for the consumer, and hopefully with this and more coming out, they'll do the same thing with the headphone space that they did with the IEM space. And that's just a good thing all around. Hopefully they send me the new and improved unit, and hopefully it's something we can all enjoy. If you want to see that video and many more in the pipeline, do consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Namaste.